you everyone for joining this amazing conversation and these astonishing panelists that we are joining us for a conversation about the BRICS. The BRICS has long represented an influential and unique coalition of major emerging economies, providing leadership on the global stage without being classified as traditional superpowers. Dozens of countries have expressed interest in joining the club. And this year, BRICS announced the expansion of 6 more countries. So in the meeting in Russia in October 2024, besides the 5 original countries, another 6 countries will join the club: Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. So that reflects, for sure, the changing in geopolitics around the world. As recently I read in The Economist, in an article wrote by John McDermott, the world is becoming more multipolar and middle powers more assertive in challenging the Western-led order. So a group of 12 countries account for 46% of the world population and almost 30% of the GDP. And it will include 2 of the 3 largest oil producers and the most powerful countries in the Gulf, Latin America, and arguably Africa. So questions are on the table. What an heterogeneous global South BRICS can achieve from now on? Where do the strengths of the new BRICS alliance lie, and how can they work together to continue their influence position in the global order? So let me introduce the panelists that are joining us today. His Excellency Ali Sabri, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sri Lanka, Ambassador Mesgunu Argamok, State Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia, Her Excellency Erika Moines, Chair of Adrian Hirst's Latin American Center Advisory Council at the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C., and former Panamanian State Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Victor Gao, Vice President of Beijing-based Center for China and Globalization, Chair Professor of Suzhou University, and former English interpreter for Deng Xiaoping. So usually would like to open the conversation, which is what we need to achieve today, avoiding individual speeches, if possible, ladies and gentlemen. And I would like to throw you a question, the same question for all of you, in 2 minutes each. What makes BRICS a rising influence in a multipolar international order? And I would like to start with His Excellency Ali Sabri, please.
I think basically for a too long period of a time, 2 little countries have influenced too large influence over too many people, which is not equitable. Therefore, there is a growing group of people who want a more equitable, more justice, a prevailing world order. In that world order had not been coming for a long, long period of time. But things have changed in the recent past. China's economy had grown, and the BRICS economies have grown, and the middle powers have come in. So rather than one group is controlling the whole narrative, whether it is political, defense, security, economic, and monetary management of the whole world, people are looking for alternative. That's the only way this hegemony could be broken. So people, I think if you look at most of these countries, the politicians are not representing the general public's view, even in the Western world. So it is in that context, I think, this, for the first time in the history, there is a real possibility of this power shifting. So I feel Global South can become a force to reckon if these countries in the BRICS could get their act together. A long, long way to go. I don't think Global North will sit and idle and allow that to take place. So they need to understand that realities and the threat. but there is a great possibility this could happen, and that would change this unipolar world which we have been experiencing over a period of time towards a real multipolar world. I think it's an exciting time, so we all are looking towards it. Countries like Sri Lanka, middle powers, middle income countries, would like to see that more balanced approach in world affairs, which is equitable, reasonable, not might is right, but what right is right. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Mesgano Argamok, what makes BRICS a rising influence in the multipolar international order?
Thank you, first of all, for having me here. It is important that to underline this is the BRICS establishment. BRICS grouping is not an anti-Western traditional establishment, or is not replacing the traditional, Western establishment. This is a new grouping, to bring about socio-economic development. The most important aspiration of this grouping is the driving force is economic development, trade, investment. So the global order required, there was a constant quest for reform, inclusivity, fair global multilateral system. So this rising grouping would address those inclusivity issue, financial inclusivity, and also the political inclusivity, regarding bringing the global south in the front. This global south, is an emerging economy with the GDP, growing GDP, with almost 50% of the global population. So this requires fair representation and participation in the new emerging global order.
So as a follow-up, do you think that the countries that are wanted to become members of the BRICS are treated unfair with the current system?
Yes, I mean, the global financial architecture is not inclusive. And, the driving force, if you, see the old Bretton Woods institution, all the economic considerations, the financial architectures, these are established only to address, the post-World War II issues. So there was a lot of quest for inclusivity, participation, addressing the global south.
Interesting. Erika Moines, your views on the BRICS and its role as rising influence in the multipolar order.
Thank you. I want to start by addressing that idea, the new world order with multipolarity. That idea essentially involves that there's not one single or two single global powers, but there are multiple sources of powers. And I think we all have to come to terms with the reality that there are more and more states embracing the idea that they do not want to be part of that single or bipolar world, but are rather looking for different ways where they can foster growth and investment. So you have, on one side, countries that are large and dense, such as India and Brazil, that are trying to place themselves at the forefront of the agenda for development. But you have, on the other, smaller states that are looking for ways where they can find alignment in ways that they can foster their own growth. Of those smaller states, there are some that can play a critical role for various reasons. For instance, there could be large capital to deploy, there could be critical natural resources, or they could be playing or have an advantage in logistics or supply chain, such as the Panama Canal from Panama, where I'm from. So I think we have to view this new world order of multipolarity not as a threat to any one global power, but rather as a new opportunity to foster growth and investment.
Yeah, but that means that some are going to lose and some are going to gain, because it's a net zero sum, right?
No, so
it's not a threat, but some countries are going to lose for sure.
I disagree. Foreign Policy, the journal, just published an article on multipolarity. They actually measure and how it was now starting to be distributed. And then the idea being that some countries are choosing to compete or to cooperate on an issue-by-issue basis, and that we can have a fair world order with this approach.
But then, Minister, how do you explain the resistance from those who are managing the current system?
So again, so as I mentioned, I think we have to come to terms to this new reality where you have various countries, particularly smaller states, that are looking to find alignments and ways where they can cooperate and generate and foster this social and economic growth that they need.
Let's finish the first round with Victor Gao. Your views.
Thank you very much. First of all, please allow me to congratulate Qatar for lining up the truce, albeit too short, in the Israeli-Palestine war. And the fact that there is only one single country which vetoed the United Nations Security Council resolution calling for ceasefire in the Israeli-Palestine war should convince all of us that we should be very lucky living not in a unipolar world. Allow me to emphasize, the multipolarity is a fact, is a megatrend. It's not a dream, it's not a strategic plan. It is a fact that we are all living through. And in that context, I think BRICS really demonstrates its vitality and sustainability. BRICS is a framework of equality and consultation and consensus. It is not framed in the geopolitical sense of the word. It is really very much dedicated to cooperation, contributing to peace and stability, and uplifting all of us, all the members, from poverty, from backwardness, and promoting progress and technological breakthrough. In that context, I think BRICS has a lot of vitality to it. And the next question after the summit meeting in Johannesburg is, when will be the next expansion? I don't think the expansion from 5 members to 11 members is the end. It is just the beginning. I could see that BRICS will grow to a size of 25 or even larger, and we need to ask which other countries should join BRICS in due course. There are very natural candidates like Nigeria or Indonesia, but allow me to share with you the unthinkable. What about Turkey? What about Mexico? You know, there is a distinguished participant from Turkey who said, no, that's not possible. Turkey is a NATO member. But I asked him to check whether it is written in Quran or in the Bible that a NATO member cannot join BRICS. No, it's not written over there.
Are you sure?
So don't be surprised one day if Turkey or Mexico will join BRICS, because it is an organization of great vitality and sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. That's interesting. You wanted to say something, right? Please.
No, basically you were asking a very important question. That was whether how are they going to, the people who are controlling the order today, how are they going to take this on? And they have no choice. Now, this has happened in the past also. Empires have been there, they have been failing, others have been coming in. So this order is also, it is tend to change from a unipolar thing into a multipolar thing. So you have to come to terms with that reality. That's good for everybody, for the entire world. So, I mean, I come from a country for 500 years, were ruled by colonial powers. But at some point in time, those colonial powers ruled about 57 countries. Nobody ever thought that it is possible for small countries like us to stand up against them and regain our independence. So you cannot suppress those legitimate rights and the aspiration of the people forever. It's good that they come to terms with sooner than later, so it could be peacefully attained. Good for everybody, good for the world. And right must prevail over might. That, I think, the aspiration of the global population.
Mr. Gao, you mentioned that the BRICS brings together cooperation and prosperity. And that brings me to the question that I was thinking when I was preparing this panel, which is what today holds the BRICS together. And let me mention that economically are diverse, to embrace a currency union or free trade area. And politically, they have different systems. Just to mention, Brazil, India, and South Africa are considered democracies, and Russia and China are considered autocracies. So is it possible for a group of that diverse type of countries to get together in order to work in a common purpose?
Thank you. You are raising a very important question. I think in the world of today, differences and diversities should not be the problem. It should be a fact, and it should be what will unite us to gain greater strength. For example, BRICS countries really come from different continents. They have different political systems, sometimes ideologies, different faith, for example. But that's not a problem. And the fact that both the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Iran are members of BRICS should indicate to all of us that BRICS is a framework for unity. You can really overcome diversity or sometimes differences to achieve a common goal. And I would say BRICS being not put in the framework of geopolitics, not for confrontation or conflict with anyone, but really just to promote what matters the most. That is the economic development, that is to overcome adversities in economics, in connectivity, for example, and you mentioned financial connectivity. Financial connectivity, currency cooperation will be forthcoming within the BRICS framework. It will just take a matter of years, and if you listen very carefully to what the president of Brazil has been talking about, he has been urging for faster actions within BRICS for financial connectivity. Therefore, don't be surprised if one day there will be a major announcement for financial or currency cooperation within the BRICS framework, because I would say the real test of the situation is whatever that can promote productivity and efficiency within the BRICS framework can be done. There is no limitation, there is no hindrance or prohibition for whatever that can be done for greater productivity and efficiency. Thank you.
Minister Megasnu Arnagwok.
It is not a geopolitical association. It just, as I said, it's more of economic orientation. The economy, trade, investment is a driving force. Yes, there are diverse kind of foreign policy, cultural differences, but BRICS will work, the working culture is based on consensus. So that is the most important element. So the geopolitics drive is not a central element. The economic drive, inclusivity, and fair representation, and promoting multilateral cooperation is at the heart of this cooperation.
Minister Moines, is the big BRICS try to counterbalance the G7, for instance?
No? Yes. As I mentioned, I think that there are multiple blocks forming for different reasons. And I think that you don't have to be aligned in all of them, meaning you could be aligned politically, you could be aligned or trying to seek something on your economic agenda or on your trade agenda. So I think it is healthier for the world order to have these multiple initiatives flourishing and developing and striving to form opportunities that we desperately need.
Mr. Gao, Minister, anyone?
Allow me to add a point. You asked about G7 versus BRICS. Allow me to emphasize, with or without G7, BRICS can still exist. Why? Because these member countries of BRICS, they want to have independence and equality. They want to have their voice heard on the international stage. With G7, whenever it tries to dictate terms to the rest of the world, it actually increases the incentive for the BRICS member states to rise up to the occasion to make their voices heard on the international stage. Allow me to mention when China accounted for more than 50% of the BRICS to start with only 5 member states, China did not dictate terms to other BRICS members. All the 5 members operated in equality with each other. Now we have 11 members in BRICS. I think this equality and independent decision-making of each of the BRICS members will become even more important. And this will serve as a greater incentive for all the other applying countries, because they see BRICS as a platform of equality, a platform where they can cooperate to the extent possible and really achieve greater efficiency and efficacy in whatever economic endeavors they want to engage with. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought two important points that I thought even if your own country, do you like monopolies? Is monopolies good? Whether goods or services or anything. Monopoly is bad. Monopoly is bad because consumer doesn't get the right, the best services, best price, best product. So it's same for the world. Instead of a monopoly, counterbalancing that, alternatives available, as opposed to international orders, international organizations, as opposed to multilateral platform, how the human rights are perceived, I think it's a good thing for the world. It's important that we understand that. You don't need to compete with each other, but you bring it to the table, alternative way of looking the same issue. Then the other one is about diverse nature of this economy. That's a very good point. That diverse nature of these countries make it incumbent for compromise, so flexibility, and ultimately they will come down to a common minimum understanding. This is where we will intervene, this is where we agree, this is where we will not touch. And that's what world is looking for, because we all know some of the countries preach human rights, but they preach it differently. When it comes to their allies, they will just turn a blind eye. So therefore, it's time that we get a common minimum understanding and allow that different forces coming together and bringing to the table alternative. For example, international financial institution. You have now, which is totally dominated by the global north. So why shouldn't we have a couple of organizations competing with each other, controlled by the global south? Ultimately, countries like Sri Lanka and the middle income countries will have a better choice. And that would create or result in a more equitable world. That's what I feel.
Yeah. I would like to hear from both ministers regarding to something that many analysts points when we talk about the big BRICS, which is the influence and interest that China has in this bloc to counterbalance the Western-led economy and the architecture of globalization. Let me put it that way. And I was wondering if, as a ministers, do you think that there is a risk of being in a group of countries which such a strong influence of China? So you change the Western-led countries by China, Minister.
As this grouping works, the current working procedure, operating environment. This is more of an economic trade investment platform and work for joint common interest, promoting global multilateral world. So in my view, representing the global south, bring the voice of the global south and creating an inclusive economic environment related to trade. China is the biggest trading partner to every continent. So trading is an element, investment is an element, technology transfer is an element in this case. So in that context, the influence of China in the global economy is real, and trading with China is a practical aspect of it. So every continent is trading with China, and that should not be considered as a geopolitical alignment. That is the driving element of this grouping.
Minister, and then Mr. Gao.
No, I don't think so, because if you carefully look at in the past, I don't think China has imposed their political will or their way of living on other countries. Tell me one place, other than probably traditionally they claim it as part of China, which even the United States have said they own only one China and one China policy there. Other than that, they have not gone invaded somewhere, they have not engineered regime change and all those things. They have economically helped other countries. Like if you look at the global south, countries like Sri Lanka, we had the largest growth from fastest growth from 2005 to 2017, about average 7.2%. That growth was possible after our war. Massive investment came from countries like, particularly from China. Those investment was central in transforming our country. So therefore, those investments are very important. $1 trillion or so had been invested in the recent past. While others take a wait-and-see policies, Chinese took risk and invested. So it has its risk, it has its pros and cons. But those countries who are taking that investment should be careful enough to where do you take that investment, and it probably an equity-based investment is the better way of looking at it. But I don't think that China can dominate this BRICS, because India is also growing and growing fast, and these are sizable big economies. And China will also be wise enough to understand that no one is going to take a Chinese dominance over northern dominance. So therefore, I don't think they will do that. They probably want a more of an equitable partnership. That's how our experience had been with China. India is also growing equally fast, so it could be a more of a balanced approach, more of a favorable approach than imposing approach and interfering approach. That should be the course for their success.
Thank you. Allow me to make several very quick points. You mentioned India. 42 years ago, the size of the Chinese economy and the Indian economy were more or less on the par. Today, one China equals about 6 India. This is a fact. And the fact that India is growing very rapidly should be congratulated. I do hope India eventually will be one of the top 3 largest economies in the world. And I hope it will be quicker rather than slower. The second thing, you talked about the dominance of China. I hope you will carefully listen to what Elon Musk said. He said by the middle of the century, the Chinese economy will be double the size of the US economy. I normally think Elon Musk has a point, and we should really heed what he is saying. But either in the past when China was much smaller, or today when China is already larger than the US economy if we use purchasing power parity, or in the future when China will be doubling the size of the United States by the middle of this century, I don't think China will dominate any country. Allow me to quote Prime Minister Mahathir of Malaysia. He said, "We don't fear China." Several hundred years ago, China came to our shores. China never took any inch of our land. This is what China is, never taking any land. One defense minister of China told his counterpart in a much smaller country in China's neighborhood, and he assured him China will never fire the first shot at that country. But then he said China will never allow that country to fire the second shot. I hope it's very philosophical. From the Chinese perspective, war is always the last resort. It's always a bad choice. Peace and engaging with each other on equal terms and grow together should be the preferred methodology. This also applies to BRICS framework. Thank you.
Mr. Gao, before I mention the difference between countries, and I mentioned one political point, which is autocracies versus democracies. In autocracies, the general opinion, the public opinion, could be considered or not. In democracies, should be considered. And I have some figures that caught my eye when I prepared the panel. According to a poll published on July 27 this year by the Pew Research Center, negative views toward China have become more common since 2019. In South Africa, 40% of respondents had an unfavorable view of China, up from 35% a year ago. In Brazil and India, the same. In Brazil, shares rose from 27% to 48%, and in India, from 46 to 67%. So my question is, with these figures in what is considered democracies, how would the governments that are members of the BRICS can be affected by the society?
Thank you very much. I'll be very quick. If any one of us believes there is only one model of democracy, he or she probably is indulging in fantasy. Now, democracy has different representations, and the representations should suit the circumstances of each of these countries in the world. No one has a monopoly of democracy. No one really can claim that its democracy, whatever it is defined, works the best, not only for itself, but for all the other countries in the world. If any one of us believes that in China there is no democracy, how can you explain the fact that over the past 42 years, the Chinese economy really developed so fast that it changed from on the par with India to about 6 times as big as India? There must be something that China has been doing right. There must be something that India probably has not done that right, even though India has always claimed to be the largest democracy in the world. It used to say it's the second. It's the largest democracy now. It also has the largest population in the world. So I would say, when you look at a country like China, don't really fool yourself to say, no, it's an autocracy, or it's not a democracy, or it's an enemy of democracy. China has the system which is best suited to its circumstances and the challenges. You talked about the public poll. I hope those who are doing polls or being polled should visit China and see what China is. The reports you see in the Western media are really not reflecting the realities on the ground. And I can talk to you on a one-on-one basis for hours to convince you eventually that the reality is very different from the Western reports.
That's
Thank you.
interesting. That would open another conversation between democracies and liberal democracies. But let's put that conversation for another panel. Definitely, there are different point of views about that. But thank you for your answer. Erika Moines, you live in a Western hemisphere where the United States is always claiming that this is an area of influence of them, of Washington. But the countries in Western hemisphere are looking for diversify, looking for China, for investment from China, from other countries. And sometimes Washington is not happy with that. But the influence of Washington it's well known, widely from the Rio Bravo until the Patagonia. How a country like Panama, you were a foreign minister of Panama, can balance the national interest looking for new investments, looking for China, looking for other countries, like the BRICS group, and not annoying Washington or not make Washington away from the interest of the country? I mean, to find a common ground between both.
That's a very paternalizing view. Panama is a sovereign country, as many others. Our strategic partner and ally has always been the US, and it continues to be. But that doesn't preclude Panama and other countries from exploring opportunities with other countries. We have the Panama Canal, which depends on trade. One of the largest users of the Panama Canal is China, as other countries. So I think, just as I mentioned again, the multipolarity benefits everyone, and I believe I heard Secretary Blinken say a few months ago that even with the BRICS countries, that they hold strong relationship with each of the countries. So I don't see this sort of one or the other optionality for countries such as mine.
Mr. Gao, I think
Thank you very much. You talked about the investments that China made in any other countries which may make Washington unhappy. But allow me to say, the real litmus test of whether these Chinese investments are good or not is you see whether Washington keeps asking China to continue to buy US Treasury bonds. It's kind of investment in the United States. You know, Secretary of Treasury Yellen visited China earlier this year. Do you know what did she talk about in Beijing? She kept asking China two things. First, don't dump Treasury bonds that the Chinese government held. The second, keep buying more Treasury bonds that the US government will issue. Now, this is the real litmus test. The United States probably wants China does not make any other investments in other countries so that China will have more money to keep buying US Treasury bonds. So wait until one day when the US government says, I no longer need China to buy US Treasury bond, then you will see the real truth. US wants China to continue to buy US Treasury bond. And US may not be happy when China invests in other countries in many parts of the world. But that's not fair. Whether China wants to invest in other countries is not to be dictated by the United States. It's going to be dictated by China and Latin American countries or African countries or Southeast Asian countries. And investment in itself should not be politicized or demonized. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add, China is one of the biggest trading partners to the US and to European economy as well. As China is one of the biggest trading partner in WTO. So whenever China is looking for trade and investment opportunity in Africa or somewhere else, it should not be a surprising point. Why, I mean, the other group, raising a question why China is investing, trading with Africa or with other part of the global south. That's the most, interesting part, and the Western or the Northern economy also benefiting from the growth of the growing trade between China and other part of the world.
We are running out of time. We have 4 minutes left, and I would like to finish giving you the opportunity of final remarks. And I'm going to start with the former Minister of Panama, regarding to the topic of the panel today, which is the BRICS. Minister.
I think it's a great idea to be talking sort of initiatives like this one because as we've been talking throughout the panel, the more and the more opportunities that smaller states have to create alliances on trade, on investment, on financial, on any sort of issue, creates this opportunity on a one-to-one basis to foster opportunities of economic development and social that weren't there before. So we should all embrace this idea of multipolar world in ways that is not a threat to one particular global power, but rather opportunities for others.
Mr. Gao.
I think all of us need to get to terms with the multipolar world we are living through. Secondly, when we look at BRICS versus, let's say, G7, we should not only look at BRICS today versus G7 today, we should also look at BRICS over the next 25 or 50 years versus G7 over the next 25 to 50 years. I would say BRICS is truly an organization or a framework for the future. It represents the future development opportunities. And I hope G7 will come to terms with the fact that BRICS is here, BRICS is growing, BRICS is increasing, and BRICS can be a platform to cooperate with rather than something G7 or any other developed countries should pick a fight with. Thank you.
Minister of Ethiopia.
BRICS is a cooperative framework platform rather than a competitive framework with the traditional West or traditional North. So it's going to promote equality, investment, trade, new inclusive global order.
And let's finish with His Excellency Ali Sabri.
I think BRICS brings into the table, as I told earlier, multiple choices. People would like to have multiple choices as opposed to one choice. So that's good for the world. For example, a country like mine, Sri Lanka, we were struggling for investment, but all of a sudden there is a galore of investment because Chinese invested, the others want to invest. And for the first time in Sri Lanka during the last 12 months or so, American DFC, US DFC, that is the Development Finance Corporation, and invested about $1 billion. So that gives us a lot of opportunities, you know. So sometime smaller economies would like to have that competition for you to draw investment from various parts of the world. So that was possible because there is this competing powers in a multipolar world is taking shape. So I'm excited that this could bring a more equitable, more rational, more reason-based world order, which everyone is looking forward to.
Ali Sabri, Ms. Ganu Argamog, Erika Moines, and Victor Gal, thank you so much for your insights. Let's give them a big round of applause.